This episode is for Tuesday, November 22nd, 2016. Welcome, Crater fans. I'm your host, Josh Owens, along with my co-host,
Ben Duguid.
Welcome, Ben.
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
Good. It's been a while. Feels
It
weird.
has.
Podcasting. I'm glad to be back at it, though.
Yeah.
So, it's been about a week, a little over a week since we got back from space camp, and just decided to try to get back to it. I know I've been particularly busy. Abby's been busy, so I asked Ben to hop on and maybe we could get an episode done because people were asking, "Hey, what happened?"
Sounds good.
Here we are.
Glad to be here.
Indeed. So, one, if you're looking for, there's going to be a lot of videos coming out on my channel soon on YouTube if you happen to watch that. I got a number of videos from the summer Creator Mobile Conf, and then we'll also have the videos from Space Camp as well, which was pretty awesome. But today we're going to talk about Goodbye Meteor, Hasta la Vista.
Oh.
GraphQL Summit videos. React 15.4 is out, and Yarn versus NPM, which we were talking about, you and I before the show. Like, I don't think we've done a show since Yarn came out.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so
It's been a while.
Talk a little bit about Yarn too. Find it interesting.
All right, so
yeah,
Hi Meteor.
This is a big one. Yeah, so Aeronoda, like, if you haven't been paying attention, maybe you didn't notice, but there hasn't been a lot of activity going on over in Aeronoda land with the stuff they're doing with Meteor. And I think that's because he's moved on, right?
Yeah.
And that's essentially what this post confirms. I talked to him when I was in New York, had dinner with him over at Lauren Sands Ramshaw's house. And he, it was just clear to me at that point that he was mostly moved on from Meteor, wasn't doing a ton of things with it. And, when I privately asked him about Flow Router, he said it's probably better if you use React Router. So, I think at that point he was kind of done, but I think it's just like eventually I'm glad he said something, right? Like, he has a lot of projects that have a lot of users, and it's probably better to go the route of saying something than not saying something like Iron Router and just kind of let it stagnate, touches it. And he's the gist of the post is, it was fun. I'm glad I got to do it. I'm more interested in other technologies now. And he's looking for people to help out with the open source projects. So if you use FastRender, Flow Router, Mup, any of that kind of stuff, go find the repos and go open an issue or find an issue that someone's already opened that's talking about like taking over the project, because that's the only way these things survive at this point. So.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Aeronoda's been great for the Meteor community. I think, obviously, we joke around about, which Aeronoda bot made this, because he was doing a whole lot of stuff just all the time. It was crazy. I think you're right. I remember Mantra came out, seemed pretty interesting, and he kind of led the React charge, and then slowly started doing more React things. And yeah, I think you're right. They were even doing a bunch of GraphQL things before I think even Apollo had started. Yeah, and so I think if you were paying a little bit of attention or had seen some of the stuff he was doing, I think it made sense. So yeah, I think he handled it cleanly, and I still appreciated all the things that Aeronoda did. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, even like I've been busy working with Foot Cardigan for the last couple months and trying to get their Meteor app ready for production launch. And the last thing that I did, we put the launch on hold because we were getting too close to their busiest time with Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But like the last pieces that I was working on was SSR, and like his hand is like his fingerprints are just all over everywhere you go, and you're looking at SSR and Meteor. Like he pioneered a lot of that early work, so very appreciative for that, and certainly made my life a lot easier in terms of getting that piece done for Foot Cardigan. So
Definitely.
I appreciate everything that he certainly brought to the table. And, you know, I don't think that he's focusing on Storybook at this point. We don't know what's going to happen with Kadira. Like, he didn't reference shutting it down or anything, but at the same time, like, I can't imagine they're going to put much effort into it. So I did leave a comment on the article, like, what does this mean for Kadira? Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, did he respond at all? No, doesn't look like it. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I also know that he said he started a new Medium publication. So if you're interested in staying in the Aeronota loop, JavaScript mantra is what he called that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a link at the bottom.
Actually,
pretty cool. And I saw that the other day. He posted some.
It was the Next.js story, right? And
oh yes, that's what it was.
That's the other interesting thing. Like I'm finding Next.js. I realized like I didn't put it on the list to talk about, but I did want to talk about it a little bit because I've been playing with it as well, and like I'm super impressed with what they've put together so far. And you know, I honestly like it a little bit better than Create React App. And I don't know, like I'm super interested to see them push forward and get a little bit more support. So it's got its own router, and it's got server-side rendering built in by default, and it's just React and Webpack. And the thing you do is make sure you put any of your data fetching in the get initial props, and it'll make sure that it gets rendered properly for server-side rendering. So.
Yeah, and then they just use the file system as the routing API, right?
Yeah. For page names, yeah, you just make a file in the pages folder, and like that'll stitch it together, and everything should work.
Yeah, they're Zeit. I'm not sure how to say it. They're doing some really, really cool stuff.
Yeah,
really.
And like that's the other thing too. Like, you know, having played with numerous deployment options for the various things I've built over the years, like they have now.sh, and like that was stupid simple to deploy a Next.js app. And you know, and like other people have made a build pack for Heroku as well, so if that's your jam, you can check that out. And then I was playing, I'm planning on playing around with Doku or Doku, I don't know how you say it.
Doku's cool.
Yeah, and so since you already have a build pack, like theoretically you should just be able to use that build pack and throw this up on DigitalOcean as well. So then the new CreatorConf site, I'm getting ready to launch the CreatorConf JavaScript edition for 2017. Super excited about it. But I built the entire thing in Next.js, and rather than doing anything crazy with the database, I actually just have a JavaScript file that has an object in it that describes all that.
Why not?
Giving them, and like it just renders that out in React, and you know, good to go.
Yeah, I mean, if it's static, why not? Makes sense. Yeah, we should have Rosh. Is that how you say his name?
Mm-hmm.
Have him on the Space Dojo podcast.
That's not a bad idea. I may ask him to come on to the
that'd be cool
show, because he's definitely going to be given. He's agreed to give a talk at CreatorConf as well, so I'm super excited about that. He was excited to hear I was using Next.js as well. So yeah, I don't know. Like if you're looking for, like, the number one question I'm getting right now is like, is Meteor dead? It's not dead. I definitely feel like it's at this point where it's moving slower.
Yeah.
And a lot of the rest of the communities out there, the JavaScript communities and what they're doing, and like people building individual pieces you can tie together and build something great. I also think, like, in general, they're moving slower than they ever have as a team, right? Because they really just have one guy at this point. Excuse me. And like, it's just not like he's I appreciate Ben so much. Smart guy, super smart guy, but
Mhm.
never going to be able to move at the pace that they used to move. And I feel like they've lost a lot of their innovation and things that made them unique or special as a platform to choose. Like a lot of that's starting to go away. And I don't know, like people are asking like, oh, what's going to be the next big thing? Like, I have no idea. For me, like I'm building React apps and I'm just interested. Like the piece I haven't figured out is how to get data to the front end. And, you know, maybe that's Falcor, or maybe that's I don't know, GraphQL or Pop. I have no idea. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in learning, and I think to me Next.js is going to continue to push forward and probably be that piece on the front end that makes the most sense. And if it's not, maybe it's create React app, or something like that. But definitely, like I probably going forward won't be building a whole lot of Meteor apps myself.
Yeah, I think so Create React App has this npm eject script, right, where they just eject the config, and you can't undo from that once you've ejected. Like that's that, and then you handle it yourself. And it's almost like Meteor is a way more overarching build system that you can't eject from. So
Yeah.
that's why it's kind of, all in or not in at all.
Well, and you know, part of that was I think there's no way to eject because you're locked into their package system, right?
Yeah.
And like we got a partial eject button. Like we can eject half the app
Yeah.
with the npm support that came in 1.3. But the problem is like I still haven't heard anything about 1.5. And I don't like they can't even I don't know. Okay, I'll just say it. Like I feel like they've moved the majority of their team over to Apollo and working on Apollo. And our next story to me speaks a lot about where Meteor's head is at, or MDG's head is at about.
Yeah.
And like they haven't even like 1.5. They made the change to say it's going to be all about Apollo, but I haven't seen any stuff coming out about 1.5 or where they're at with their Apollo integration. And it seems like if Apollo is their next big thing, wouldn't they want some smart Meteor integration there, like ready to go? But I'm not seeing it. So I don't know. Like I'm very, very confused by how they're operating. I honestly, like if I had to guess, like, you know, you keep hearing about how they want to turn things over to the community and get them more involved, but I'm just seeing those things kind of flounder as well. So I don't know. Like I'm not feeling super great about the future of Meteor at this point, but I've probably felt that way for over a year now. So it's not, none of this is a big shock to me.
Yeah, I think there's just been a shift to focusing more on Apollo and realizing that, they started doing this, I guess, full stack JavaScript apps pretty close to before anyone else was doing things like this. Now we have all these different ways. There's a ton of different ways to handle all these things. If you look at the React ecosystem and what people are doing over there, it's like a lot of different approaches, and it's moving really fast. And so because of that, and because Meteor's desire to have legacy support, and like migration story is really good, they're kind of trapped in this older system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, having NPM is a way to hopefully make that feel more futuristic and stuff, but you're still hooking into their build system, which seems to be really complicated. Along with, you said it, there's only one guy working on Meteor right now.
Mm-hmm.
A fellow Ben. And yeah, that's tough. And so they're not moving very fast. I wouldn't say that Meteor is dead. I think there's a ton happening in Apollo, and I think they've been doing a really good job. I guess marketing is the right word. Marketing that and building that, where I think a lot of people, even outside of the Meteor community, are using Apollo.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's the great piece about like building. So I've come to this conclusion that libraries are probably better than frameworks. I think that it's fine to have loosely created frameworks, but maybe not like tightly coupled frameworks like I think Meteor is. So if you look at, if you look at Meteor versus GraphQL, like the decision making process involved there is like I got to buy into a whole lot of things to start using Meteor. Whereas if I want to use GraphQL, I can actually just set that up and start using it in a piece of my app, right? Like plenty of people are using Apollo or GraphQL in general with, Rails or Erlang and Elixir and Phoenix, or there's a number of people that are consuming this without necessarily having to buy into any one particular thing. Like you don't even have to use React in order to use Apollo, like, or GraphQL. Like there's a Relay. There's a ton of options to get this working with React or Angular or any of the other frameworks like Vue or Feathers. Or so I mean there's just a ton of options out there right now, and so I think it's just easier to buy into GraphQL. And so
Yeah.
that's probably why that makes a lot more sense for them in the long run, business wise, because if you're going to build a product for Meteor or GraphQL, like getting a full stack buy-in for Meteor is a really tough sell. And I think that's what they've seen over time. That's caused them to shift their focus into GraphQL and do things like the GraphQL Summit.
There we go. Yeah, GraphQL Summit was super cool. And there was a ton of talks from a bunch of different people. They had Lee Byron there, one of the guys who I guess helped co-found GraphQL. Super cool. They had a panel that had been using GraphQL in production. You should check out the videos. Did you get a chance to watch any of these, Josh?
I have not yet. I'm gonna try to sit down over the Thanksgiving break and kind of speed through them. I tend to watch YouTube videos at like 1.5 speed or 2 speed if I can stand it. It depends on the speaker, but yeah, it's definitely a good way. Like I love watching YouTube videos, but yeah, I definitely like. I'm excited to hear about the talk from Shopify and what they're doing with GraphQL. So that's probably the first one I'll check out. And then, obviously like Lee's a good speaker. So excited to watch his talk as well.
Yeah, he's a great speaker. And so he talked about just 4 years of GraphQL. We're 4 years in and kind of, so he had this little sheet that was his best case scenario, his kind of predictions. And he said, basically he said in 2 to 4 years, large companies and tech giants would start to pick up GraphQL. And we've seen that happen. GitHub, obviously Facebook is using it, but GitHub has released a public, I think it's in beta still, but I think they have almost, I think I saw an update somewhere that said they had pretty much everything, all their APIs under GraphQL now. It's still in like a developer beta or preview, but it's pretty cool. And I think we'll start to see more of these companies choose GraphQL. Yeah, I think the advantages are super awesome. And I'm a huge fan of GraphQL. So
yeah, I think, again, like I've talked about it before, like it solves real world problems that I think exist with how REST operates. Like I've talked about before, working at GoDaddy and the transition from like this amorphous like API that was just kind of built haphazardly for a backbone app, but like we were trying to switch it over so that there was a unified API between the mobile and the JavaScript application on the front end, and like that was a really difficult thing to do, and I think GraphQL kind of solves that problem. And similarly, like as a consumer, like that's, as someone who's creating the API to be consumed, that's definitely a problem it solves. The other problem is, as a consumer of an API, it can be very, very frustrating to have to like build up this series of REST calls that you have to do, and like, I'm going to grab this data first, and then I need this little piece of it, and then I can go grab this other data from this other call. And then like that allows you to start iterating over and making a bunch of calls to get data out of an API. And I think that GraphQL equally solves that problem. And frankly, like the developer tools just have always impressed me as well. I think that's just a super important part of building something that you want like high adoption in. Like build really good developer tools that make everyone's job a little bit easier, and it's gonna become a big thing in my opinion. And that's that's something that the GraphQL team has done well.
Yeah, and I saw this recently, GraphDoc, GraphDoc, on 2FD GitHub account. I don't know what that is, but they essentially just take your GraphQL schema and they convert it into a static page. That's all the the documentation for it, and it's the same thing you get in the editor, but they make it a static page, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think the tooling is great. Maybe GraphQL has just ruined me, and it's like I don't ever want to write REST again because why?
Yeah.
Why? I don't know.
Yeah. It's much better to just say, this is the data I need, and here's the
Yeah.
piece you need to help me build that, and then give me the data back. And I think to me, the Apollo team is doing super interesting, exciting things as well. Like they've actually got their subscription support out now, so that's starting to look interesting. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of excited about it. It does, it's an interesting dichotomy because like we were talking before about Meteor, and one of the things that is super easy to do is like get started and not have to feel like you're doing a ton of boilerplate and that kind of thing. And like doing a GraphQL project, like I actually put one on hold for a little while because it just felt like there was so much boilerplate involved with getting everything set up. Like I don't know, it got frustrating. It's like that I'm a developer Twitter account, and have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I am developer or whatever.
Yeah, and like they're like there was a tweet where it's like, oh, we did a hackathon this weekend, and oh, how'd it go? Well, we got Babel configured.
Yeah,
and that was it. We just
that's it.
It definitely feels like some of that stuff can be a little tough, and so like that's also why I'm excited to see things like Next and Create React App, and it makes some of that stuff a little bit easier, but there's still a lot of setup that you have to do.
Yeah, I was saying maybe we just need to create GraphQL app, but I still think that that's hard because you have to define a type system. Like it is boilerplate because you're saying, okay, you're defining the schema, which is kind of boilerplatey. But yeah,
it's just more like I have to go like write the resolvers. I think we need just a little bit of convention over configuration type of stuff in a GraphQL project, and just say like I have a resolvers folder and my resolvers just live there. And I don't know, like auto loading is probably not a great thing, so it's going to be hard to make a case for that. But just like wiring all the little parts together, like you gotta have the schema defined, and then wire in the resolvers and the queries and the mutators and all that kind of stuff. Like just seems like a lot to wire in. And then like you've got the Express app, and then you've got like a separate app for the front end, and you got to get them to talk together, and then it feels like you're finally doing something.
Yeah, there's a lot, but
it takes a while.
We'll see.
Yeah,
but it's great to integrate GraphQL with React.
The better segue would have been during the performance goals, right?
Yeah, I tried.
So React 15.4 came out, and one of the big things, like, and maybe if you haven't read yet, like if you haven't done a deep dive or you don't follow Dan Abramov, you might not have seen it, but part of the 15.4 is that they have React Perf integration with Chrome tools now. And so if you haven't used React Perf, you can just throw, this is like a little question mark, you just throw on the end of your React bit, and it'll pick it up and fire off the React Perf stuff. But it'll give you a flame graph, and it gives you the breakdown of like what it was doing for each component and when and that kind of thing. And so if you click on the link in the show notes, go scroll down, it's about a third of the way into the article, profiling components to Chrome timeline. And that's the thing that one is super interesting me about this release. So I'm assuming, the notes here say load your app with !react_perf.
Yeah, and the URL.
The query string, I'm assuming they're talking about create React app maybe. And then
that's a good question. I would assume so, because you'd have to hook into the router.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you get this lovely like flame graph that shows you what's going on, and it shows you like, hey, this component was mounted and then it was updating, and this one was mounted and updating. So like it gives you a really good breakdown of where you're spending the time. And then I haven't done a ton of using the timeline tab, but it says don't record more than 20 seconds. So big caveat there. Lock up Chrome. Apparently, it's a lot of data, I'm guessing. And then they've done some other things, like you can mock out refs for snapshot testing. But probably the single biggest thing is they made the move in 0.14 to split out React DOM from React itself. But apparently, it wasn't a fully completed move. And with this release, apparently it's now a fully operational Battle Star.
Yeah, It's secretly lived there, so you shouldn't have any problems unless you were grabbing methods.
Right.
Like under the lid folder.
So it wasn't like a huge change. It's just if you were under the covers, like using pieces of React by loading individual libraries, like this might be something that you'll have to pay attention to when you upgrade. But
yeah,
for the most part, it's kind of a silent and easy thing to migrate to. We've got 2 apps. I need to move them to the newest version and see how it works.
I mean, it's so like the way they do versioning is if you don't have any like deprecation warnings, then you should upgrade to the next version. Or that's breaking changes, isn't it? So yeah, when React 16 comes out, if you have no like deprecation warnings, you should be fine. But if you do have them, you fix them, and then the next version, whatever the deprecated warning log messages said, those will be removed. So pretty cool way of moving along. But I don't know if even React v16 is on the horizon right now, because I don't even know if this has been on Crater much, but React has been working on this React Fiber.
I'm assuming that's going to be version 16.
I think so, yeah. But
I'm really excited about that because I convinced Lynn Clark to give a talk. Have you seen her speak before?
I have not yet. I have several on my backlog, but I know I've read a bunch of her stuff that she's written. It's really good.
She does the cartoons, and she did a good talk at ReactConf last year. That was like, it showed Redux and the various kind of front-end data management options. She did like a cartoon version of that, but she's going to do a cartoon version of like what is React Fiber and why she did it. So I'm pretty stoked about that. But like I saw today, they've got like is React Fiber ready yet.com.
Yeah, I was about to say.
And it's like I like it because they've got like the test suite on there, and it shows like I think
91.4.
Yeah, 91.4% passing.
Yeah.
So, we're gonna hopefully that'll drop soon. But it's a big, huge effort to like rework how everything is rendered.
Yeah, they just rewrote the implementation. So V16 shouldn't be like from us or from consumers of React. It shouldn't be too different. I don't think. I think the plan is to pretty much support the same, at least ES6 API. I don't know what's going to happen to React Create class and that. But yeah, but all of a sudden, ideally, perf should be much better. And there's been other libraries. I think Inferno, I know they've talked about. I've seen people talk about on Twitter being like basically a fiber-ish implementation. And they do really well perf-wise. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I'm super excited for all that. And, whenever you think about upgrading, you got to think about how you're going to get the libraries there.
Yeah.
Which brings us to Yarn and NPM.
Yarn. So another thing that's come out of Facebook, or I guess it wasn't just Facebook. A couple of people from Facebook, and along with, and I should have the list ready. But I know Yehudia Katz, which is one of the big Ember guys as well. But there was other people too. It's called this thing Yarn package. So it's github.com/yarn pkg/yarn. And yeah, so it's NPM, except it's way faster. So
Yeah, it's faster. I would say the other big thing is like is shrink wraps by default, right? So
Yeah.
you get the lock file and like the versioning between deploys is better. You know, I don't know how many people use shrink wrap. Like, have you ever used npm shrink wrap?
I haven't, but I know, I know people who have, and they like shrink wrap wasn't always perfect. It was still possible to mess up, and I guess when you get really big apps with a lot of different, I guess, transitive dependencies, it can shrink wrap can be funky sometimes. But yes, Yarn set out to solve that because you know Facebook was trying to, or all these companies were trying to get rid of the "it works on my machine" excuse with Yarn, and just having completely the same build every time you run Yarn. So Yarn is the equivalent of npm install. You can do yarn add, which would be npm install dash dash save whatever package. So yarn add package name, and then it by default adds it to the package.json as well, which I think is cool because sometimes you forget to run npm install dash dash save, and then you push, and somebody's like, "You didn't save it."
Yeah.
So,
Why don't like why is this broken? What did you break? Like,
yeah.
I didn't break anything. I just added a package.
Forgot to save. Yeah, so that's cool. But so the other thing, and then the reason it's so fast is because I'm not I'm not exactly sure how they're doing this. I think it's pretty straightforward where you just if you've yarn installed or yarn added React 15.4.0 before, then the next time it added, it just pulls it from the cache directly. And so their installs are super fast where you could essentially you could yarn install or yarn things offline. So I know people have kicked around the idea of having like an npm package that's just like a yarn warmup essentially, where it just installs like the top, I don't know, 2,000 packages or something, and so you could just work offline essentially, which would be
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. And so like the thing is if you're from the Meteor community, this Yarn is probably closer to how Meteor itself, like their package system works, because they tend to have a global cache. And so most people don't realize like you have this like .meteor folder hidden in the root of your home directory, and it's
Mhm.
got all those files in there. They do symlinking, whereas when Yarn does everything. It looks like it actually copies the files, as far as I can tell, into the node modules directory.
Interesting.
But the interesting thing is like this is like a drop-in replacement for npm.
Hmm.
You know, because it's still using, you know, the same npm package registry. It's still using the node modules folder. It's still using the package.json. So like everything is like a one-to-one kind of replacement. And they're very interested in making it speedy. You know, like there's always those jokes about like waiting at the npm, like fetching packages prompts or
Yeah,
whatever.
downloading the internet. It's my go-to joke.
Yes. But you know, I think it's super interesting to see that they undertook this project, and like I've used it and I'm quite happy with Yarn. Again, this is something that Next.js kind of out of the box prompts you to use Yarn. But it's just it's really interesting to see. And so the story in question is actually from one of our community members, Chet Korkos, which he was at Space Camp. It was fun to hang out with him. And he just ran some timings trying to understand like what's the difference between what's the speed difference between Yarn and npm. And you know, he did a fresh install and then a second install and timed it out. And with npm install on first try, it was like same application, right? So we're trying to compare apples to apples. 111 seconds to do the npm install, and then the second install ran in 27 seconds. And for comparison, Yarn, same app, 53 seconds to do the first install and 0.48 seconds, so about half a second to do the secondary install. And so, you know, it definitely is a lot faster.
Yeah, it caches successfully. And I know like it's a drop-in replacement for the npm CLI, which is really just a client for npm, because I guess npm, obviously there's the registry and a bunch of other stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my initial thoughts was, wow, this is amazing. So why don't we just convert everything to Yarn and just never use npm again? Well, maybe not never, but so yeah, at the same time that this was announced, the npm Inc. had a blog post saying they think Yarn is awesome, and they're not the first, CLI or other implementation of a npm client to exist. They're like, hey, there are these other ones, and yeah, we're still really excited to see Yarn, and we hope it succeeds, which I think is interesting because
Well, and they released, what was it, version 4? Did they released?
yeah, 4 is out. I don't even know what the breaking changes are, but I did see 4 is out. And so I think because the Yarn people on the Yarn team were on JavaScript Air recently, I guess it's the second to last episode, because he's sunsetting it for now, but we'll see. And they talked about, they just had different goals. Like if you try to drop in Yarn to a really old, npm v10 or sorry, node v10 or node v12, like it might not work. Things are a little different. Where npm is really focused on backwards compatibility, Yarn is not so much. They're pretty much, like, I don't even know what versions of Node they support. I imagine it's 4 and up, but maybe it's 6 and up.
Yeah,
Probably 4.
I would think 4 for sure. Like the project I was working on was version 4 of Node.
Okay, then yeah, definitely 4.
Yeah, and 4 is still currently like the long-term supported version. So anyway, there's a I'm looking, it's like you can search for cheat sheets that kind of show you the difference in the commands. But I really think, so to me, I give Yehuda Katz a lot of credit here as well, because I think for him to step up and be involved in this is pretty awesome too, because he's got a lot of knowledge about dependency management. Like he started out in Rails, really in the Merb community, and working on that kind of stuff, and built Bundler, which was, you had Ruby gems, which was okay, but Bundler was really the first kind of dependency, like serious dependency management that we had in the Rails community. And so he worked on that pretty extensively, and I think he had a lot of knowledge, right? And so like Tilda, which Yehuda Katz is a co-founder of, like they spend a lot of time working on Ember and building apps that way. So I think this is definitely like npm. There's problems that needed to be solved here, and I'm super glad that he got on board and certainly helped out with that.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty exciting. I've also seen that you should not, random Yarn side note, you should not publish your yarn.lock file to a library. Yarn.locks are supposed to be meant for apps. And yeah, because that way your apps don't get bug fixes and stuff if they rely on Semver, as it should be. But yeah, you can Google that if you're curious. I know Dan and some other people talked a lot about that. It was pretty interesting, but Yarn seems really cool.
Yeah, I may throw the announcement into the show notes too, the Facebook announcement that kind of walks you through why. I think that's worth taking a look at.
Definitely.
And I think I'm pretty sure I can't find it in the article now, but I'm pretty sure like the Yarn client downloads the various dependencies in parallel. I think that's true. That's one of the reasons it's faster.
I would think so. I've seen in the various, again, like Chuck's article, a lot of people posted just various metrics, and I've seen ones that would install, because somehow it'll still beat it. It'll, without the cache, so with a clear cache, it'll still beat npm.
Yeah. Well, definitely. Like if you look
something faster.
If you look at that article, like it almost beat npm on the second install, right? Like the first install took 111 seconds. The second install with npm took 27 seconds. Yarn only took 50 seconds on its first install. So like it's already really close to what a cached version of npm is doing. So I think it's like super, super fast. And like, this is the kind of thing like I'm excited to see, because I think like, moving this stuff along, making it faster, again, super great for developers. And another reason like I'm excited for JavaScript is because these kinds of things are important and people are working on them. And even though like, we're all just trudging through and dealing with NPM and its slowness and the way it functions and the weirdness around shrink wrap, like I'm glad people are thinking about this stuff and trying to figure out ways to make this better. And the book certainly like brought a lot of people to the table, but a lot of other outsiders not at Facebook helped out as well.
Definitely. I know they got a lot of knowledge from one of the co-founders or founder of Cargo, which is the Rust package manager, which is supposedly super awesome. And I think is very similar to how Yarn works, but I'm not exactly sure.
Awesome stuff.
Yes. The JavaScript world is moving on. We are always fatigued. That's good.
Make JavaScript great again.
Make JavaScript great again.
It's always getting great. Greater.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you, Ben, for hopping on. It's
of course
to get back on the horse. I'm actually like I need to follow up, but I'm kind of excited. I think the Falcor guys, we might be able to snag some of those to get on the Space Dojo show.
That'd be awesome.
Which I'm super excited about. So
nice.
Definitely look for us to be putting out more content on YouTube and on the podcast feed, and I may even have another podcast brewing soon, so it could be exciting.
All right,
guys. Talk to you next time.
This video has been a Space Dojo production. You can click the Learn More button to find out more about us at spacedojo.com, or you can click the subscribe button to get notified about new videos we put out each week. Thanks for watching.